Rainmaker, the Genesis of Finding Your Happy Place podcast, features Pablo Abdian and Sid Shreeve. Here's a clip from the movie American Fiction, another piece of the evidence.
It's because I, Lisa Madrigal Ellison, have died. Obviously, this is not ideal, but I guess it had to happen at some point. Hopefully, I expired under the heaving thrusts of a sweaty Idris Elba, or perhaps in a less dignified manner, under the heaving thrusts of a sweaty Russell Crowe. Irrespective of how I went, I ask that those closest to me not mourn all that much. I lived a life that made me proud. I was loved, and I loved in return. I found work that aroused my passions. I believe I gave more than I took, and I did my damnedest to help people in need. And on top of all that, many a friend wrongly accused me of having Botox because of how tight my skin stayed well into my 50s. What more could someone ask of a life? I love you all. Thank you for being here today. Goodbye. Lisa. Cliff.
I'm asking Pablo Abdian to spread my ashes in the Recoleta in Buenos Aires near the grave of Evita.
Are those human remains? You guys have a permit for that?
One of the biggest steps in going from tourist to townie is to kiss and say hello like the Argentines do. A handshake here just isn't good enough. So I'm going to show you some of the tactics I've used and some of the mistakes that I've made in saying hello and goodbye like an Argentine. So this is a little piece I like to call the art of the kiss.
My strange request to Pablo Abdian comes from the emotion of Parkinson's and a lack of intimacy, passion, and empathy in marriage. Okay, my podcast today includes a Rainmaker, Sid Shreeve in Phoenix, who grew up in Argentina, and I spent a lot of time in South America. We talked about all the things about South America, and we even talked about the Mountain Meadow Massacre since he is a Mormon. But we are the best of friends, and I would consider him one of my best friends and business associates. And so I wanted to include the interview.
So why do you think Herb is taking his family, his wife and his daughter, out to Phoenix in the middle of summertime, the hottest days of the year? Why do you think he's taking them?
I don't know who he's trying to get to. I don't know, but I'm really glad that I've had the opportunity to meet Herb and become a friend to him, because he has always got something funny to say, and he is always on to new projects. I mean, the man never stops. He just goes like the Energizer Bunny. Although he doesn't go fast, he's still moving, and he's still coming up here, and he still encourages people, and he will sit and listen to you all day long if you wanted to talk to him. That's a friend, I think.
So do you have any speculation on why he's taking him out there?
I think it's, no, I'm not going to do that to him. I think it's because he loves Sandy and Christy, and he wants to give them some fun times.
All right. Okay. Well, we just finished up with the Baroness, the Cattle Baroness of Northwest Arkansas, Carleen Morris. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for your attention. Okay. So why do you think Herb is going to take his family to Phoenix in the middle of summer? Hottest part, July.
Yeah, unless he's trying to compare it to our humid heat and then the dry heat. I don't know. But basically to see
Trying
friends.
to make a comparison, huh?
Yeah,
Okay.
but I would say friends mostly because, you know, Herb's one of these guys that he's never met a stranger.
Yep, that's true. So you think he's going to compare the heat, dry heat to...
Yeah, it may not work though because people that have moved there have brought their plants with them, so I don't know how much desert he's going to find.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm here with my hairdresser, or are you a barber, hairdresser? What's your?
I'm a cosmetologist, Herb.
Cosmetologist, and that's good. I'm
I'm
glad.
licensed in 2.5 states.
So if I'm getting a haircut by a cosmetologist,
That's right.
it's still a haircut, but it might cost a little more.
Correct.
Is that right?
Yes.
Well, I want to get your opinion of we're taking the family out in mid-July when it's really hot. It's a lot hotter than it is here. I mean, 110 plus every day. What do you think about me taking the family out there?
Well, Herb, I've known you for a long time, so I know exactly why you took your family out to the West Desert in July, because rates are cheaper. You're basically a type life.
Okay, that's probably a good answer. Well, let's go ahead and talk about your happy place. What would you call your happy place? The place you've been?
Well, my happy place is not a physical place, really. It's things that I do that I really love. And I was just thinking about that this morning, as a matter of fact. I'm helping Dr. Burton restore the McCoy house next door here at Kirby Manor.
All right.
And I was glazing and cleaning windows, and I just really enjoy, I'm happy when I'm working on a building. And the other happy place is in my flower garden, particularly watering my flower garden, not necessarily weeding. I love to water my flower garden. I've created a stream in my backyard, and I'd say that's my physical happy place.
Well, so if I ever need somebody to wash windows or water the yard or anything, you're available? Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm here with Sid, and we're going to talk about some of our trips to South America and some of the things that we've done with our jobs, and also some of the things that we've developed with our families. And I thought maybe one of the things from a family standpoint came about a few years ago when we were in Costa Rica, and you'd rented a car, and we was kind of going the back roads. We, of course, going down there because of some opportunities with their cable TV software, and you knew the people there, and so it wasn't strange to us, and you had a lot of history of doing work down there. So I thought it was interesting that we came across this village over in Costa Rica, and there was a lot of kids out there playing, and we started having a discussion as, can they be happy there or be as happy there as our kids are in the States? And I thought you had a lot of things that you thought about and you asked, and I thought maybe...
Yeah, you said something to me that I've often thought about. We're coming along, we're driving kind of through a little jungle area, a little road. We come into an open area, a little village.
And we did have these buzzards flying over us.
And as we were going down the little road, the little narrow road, there's a little power line here. There were a couple of buzzards flying. They'd fly ahead of us, and when we get up there, they kept going to the next one. Kind of like they were waiting for us to die or something. We weren't sure. But anyway, we came upon this village, and there's a bunch of little kids playing. And if I recall correctly, you had a grandson that was born fairly...
Well, it's the daughter.
Within
It's the daughter, yeah.
And I asked Herb, I said, Herb, how come your grandson was born in the circumstances in which he was born? And then you got these little kids out here just out here in this village running around. And you said something to me, you said, yeah, but look at them. Look how happy they are.
Mm-hmm.
And I started thinking, what is happiness? Is it having lots of things? Is it just being happy with your friends and that? So it kind of gave me a little pause to think a little bit. And some of my church activity, when I had to give a talk or give a lesson or something, I used that example several times. And it was very interesting. Costa Rica is a beautiful country. Beautiful country. We did a lot of work there, Herb and I, and cable television. We visited that cable television company owned by a guy, if I recall correctly, it doesn't matter, his name was Betancourt. But it was a beautiful little country. I was hoping we could find something there that would work. I tried to buy some land there one time, I think I told you.
Yeah.
There was we were in the area called Guanacaste. And it's a kind of a yellow sand beach. And there's very few,
on the Pacific Coast side?
Yeah,
Yeah, I know that was kind of where.
And then up on the hill, there's a plot for a home. There was a realtor there, and I said, well, how much is this land? And he said, well, this plot of land. He said, man, you have to pay $25,000 for that. And I thought, $25,000? Are you kidding me? I said, I was thinking in my mind, I think I'll buy it. Then we started talking about buying it, the transaction and everything. And I said, what about title insurance? He said, what? I said, title insurance. What's that? Yeah. I said, that's to secure that I own, went through what title insurance was. He said, well, I don't think we have that.
Yeah.
I said, thank you very much. So all you need to do is buy a piece of land like that. Then that's what we say, you don't own this land, I own it,
Yeah. Well, I just had a recent conversation, I believe, with Phil Marriott, and I think he's into buying some land or selling, and I'm sure Marriott's are doing something there, and that's
well, right now, that plot of land is worth about $300,000-$400,000.
Yeah, I think
but there is Stewart Title's down there now.
Yeah.
So now title insurance, Americans going to be down $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 for that. By that.
Yeah, a lot of people have gone down there, but I know when we had that discussion I know we had a few emails. I mean, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and we kind of reflected on that, and I think that was the thing with even with my daughter that I commented on. I said, well, she's looked at her circumstances with knees replaced and also kidney transplant, and even those circumstances, she's been a person very happy and deals with people on that level. So that was kind of the thing that that kind of developed, and that was one of the things I wanted to do with some of the things I'm doing now is to talk about people's happy place and coming to Phoenix in the middle of summer and hot.
Where is happiness? Yeah. Where is happiness?
Yeah.
How do you find happiness? In today's world, that's a very difficult thing. A lot of people are running around making a lot of money, but they're not really happy.
Yeah.
And those little kids in that village down in Costa Rica were very happy. And their parents were happy. Parents were visiting with each other. They do a little fishing. They have a little restaurant there. I think we stopped there and had a fried fish there, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember, but I think we had some fried fish there. Yeah. They're all happy, very happy.
Yeah.
So that's very begs the question.
Yeah, and
what is happiness?
That's really what we're looking for here. We got, I guess, as we get older and become senior citizens, as they say, but also people with disabilities. We work a lot of people, or I do, in some of the things with Parkinson. So I was trying to kind of reflect on that because that's kind of important. And what I'm trying to develop here is to think about that a little bit and also talk a little bit about our travels, which I think there were some fun things, but also some things we reflected on how lucky we are and some of the things that people are dealing with in these other countries. So
Herb and I have traveled together doing business and exploring. We did a lot of exploring. From the grasslands of Uruguay to the fishing waters of the Amazon up by Manaus and out that area to the coastlines of Peru down to Arequipa. Remember that big volcano there? It's called Misti.
Yeah.
And Arequipa was a white city, they called it. Remember that? I don't know what kind of stone it was, but it was a white, sort of like marble or something.
Everything was white, and then it's
white, yeah.
You could go around and you hear the music of the Andes, which is you can't beat that.
Yeah, that music of the Andes.
Yeah.
That music of the Andes, to me, stirs my soul like no other music.
Yeah.
Something about that, we've been all over down there, and I've traveled all over Bolivia and Peru and those big giant mountains and the dropping down into rivers like the Urubamba River.
Yeah.
That music, it just pours over the hills and around. And it's a magic music. It is.
Well, I think we'll wrap this section up, but we want to talk about some of the other areas as we go on here. So we'll be getting back on that. So
over the hills and far away, looking out for a better day, when it seems like there's no escape.
Okay, Sid, I was really wanting to look closer at, you were kind of got the reputation of being a rainmaker. I personally generated a lot of business for people, and we got together because of when I sold to Cable Data a few years ago, and we merged, and I wanted to focus on really global business development. And I know that they put us together. Randy Lindemann was an executive there, and said we'd be a good pair to work together, and it turned out it was really a good matchup. I think a lot of things, your talents and some of the things that I did in the more in the skills of the operations and you had in the marketing come together there. So kind of want to get a little bit of the history of how you knew so many people, and maybe we can talk about a situation that was kind of interesting, and then we will talk about some more later on.
Okay, well, I was born in Arizona, as you know. I'm actually a fourth generation Arizona, which is kind of unusual. But I grew up in South America.
Right.
My father, first of all, was a missionary.
Right.
And then he came back to the United States, finished his education, and then he became a diplomat with the U.S. government.
Okay.
As a result of that experience, I got a chance to mingle with a lot of prominent families. As an American diplomat in countries down there, I got to mingle with a lot of, prominent families whose children grew up and became powerful people in different places. And I think you want me to talk about that branch in your area. One of the families that I got to know, I think I was 9, 10 years old, and he was maybe a year younger. It's a guy named Jaime Luch. And his grandfather founded a big, giant cattle ranch in Uruguay. I think it was roughly 10,000 acres or something. Prime cattle land. Right. I mean, as prime as it gets. And then over the years, he inherited the whole thing. And,
right.
He and his brother. And I go back and see him all the time. I rode the range with him since I was 12 years old. We'd get use their horses and go back and forth. And excuse my voice.
Oh, yeah.
And we traveled all over down there. Then
I was thinking about the times we went to visit him, and going out there was kind of an experience. But when we got there, first time I went out there, they had the old crank phones.
Yes.
To get to an operator somewhere. I don't know.
We
didn't use it very much, but you had access to going out.
I think the first time we went out there, he has his home, a beautiful home, remember that big house he had? He lives in another one, but he refused to live in the big house. I don't know why it bothered him.
Yeah.
And so to call out to the little office he had way out in the interior of the ranch, it was a crank phone. I remember running a line, helping him run a line, a big pole, one line out to that house out there. And you go, can you hear me? And that's the way we communicated to the office out there. And that's the way we communicated around.
Yeah.
Then the next time we went out, it was all wireless.
Yeah, wireless.
I mean, they leapfrogged over everything in a matter of months, it seemed like.
Yeah.
And then they had all the wireless.
It's always, and we did a cable system up not too far from there in Pelotas, Brazil, and I think the guy there, he was American, but it was, the old Adelphia system. But so we were close there from that property, but we went on the backside of his property, and the gauchos there were, their families were living in lean-tos, and they were watching TV. And I thought the other part of the technology picture was that they were watching television in those lean-tos, and there's no power out there, but they had the TVs were charged for batteries, and they would get signal from Brazil, and so they could do a lot of things that people wouldn't imagine could do even back at that time. So that was kind of an interesting time too.
There's a little town there. There's some squatters came on his ranch and formed a little town, and his grandfather wouldn't kick them off. He let them stay there. Mm-hmm. So they had families there, and they had a little town. A lot of intermarriage. You could tell by looking at the people. Most of them were people that immigrated from the Canary Islands.
Yeah. And
they were that way too. That was one step above cavemen living
Oh,
there.
yeah, I know.
They, when it came dinner time, one guy get on a horse, ride out, jump on a sheep, kill it, bring it back in, and they'd eat it.
Yeah, I knew when we rode horses out, times I were down here anyway, and we'd come across a big fox that looked like a wolf, and they were having to make sure they could get rid of those because they were eating all their sheep, and of course they used the sheep to feed some of the gauchos, and also I remember, I don't believe they even had horseshoes on there. The ground was so soft, and we would ride out there, and they wouldn't have any problems with that. And
they clipped the hoofs, but didn't have shoes on them.
Is that what they did? Yeah, because I was pretty amazed at that, and of course the old gauchos you see in TV, and that's what we were dealing with. And they were always helpful to get us on a horse and get us out and take care of it. So it was but also I remember about the meals, and I think the funny thing was we were sitting in this big dining room, and your friend would ring a bell, and the cook.
He had a long table.
Yeah.
He'd sit at the head, and all the rest of us around here. He had a great big plate. We had just normal size plates. You remember, this is the culture. He was the Don.
Yeah.
To me, he was just Jaime, my friend from many years. But out there, he was Don Jaime.
Yeah.
Don Jaime. When he went into town, Buenos dias, Don Jaime. How are you doing, Don Jaime? And so he had this big plate. And then when it was time to eat, he had a little bell. He'd ring the bell, and the maid would come in and start serving him first.
Oh, yeah.
Always first. And then the rest of us would eat.
Yeah, I was pretty amazed at that, just the culture. And I know that he was very accommodating. We went out there, I know you'd been a long time. I thought the fact that you had developed some of these friendships. Now, we'll get into this and some of the business things that we got into and how we were able to talk to certain people. And we actually went out to dinner with the ambassador, and we'll kind of hold that for another story. But I think what I realized in culture is that it was a top-down sell. You didn't try to work your way up like you might in the States or somewhere. That you really had to go top-down because everything changed so quickly that you had to be there, but you also had to sell it on a top-down level.
As we recall in Buenos Aires, the head of the Cablevisión was a guy named Ernequian, an Armenian immigrant to Argentina. And we started with him, the president of the company. Then when I think you and Lenicum and a few others came out at that time, we started with him and then worked our way down.
Yeah, and that was real important. But I think it's kind of interesting, the culture down here. As far as I always thought, the Brazilian culture was a little, a little more delicate, and the Argentina culture was a little more forceful or in your face. And when you had to know when you were going in to make a presentation that you were going to deal with people that were going to be asking you questions and they wanted answers and they didn't want to waste a lot of time. Yeah. Sometimes you go into others, but when I started out in cable, it was in a rural area, and all those people were kind of like the Argentina. They were pretty forceful because they didn't have a lot of time and they were doing everything. They were cross-trained and they were running the business. They didn't want to waste their time. And then when we went up and sold things with Time Warner and other people, it was a pretty delicate, trip up the ladder of management. So going international, and that's kind of what you brought into the picture, and what I saw to be successful there is that you had to be good listeners, and you also had to be in a position where you had to accept some of the cultural things and not fight them because they were pretty important to them, and until you could show that it was not the most efficient way or there was issues with it, you had to go and see how well you could probably meet their cultural demands, because if you tried to go around those, then you probably were losing it before you ever got started. So that was another important thing we learned when we were down particularly in South America, I think.
Yeah, it's we had to do that. Start at the top, work down. We did that. I remember when I first took Linticum up there.
Yeah.
He said, now, who are we going to meet? So you're going to meet the president and founder and the owner of the company. Well, how'd you get to him? I said, well, you have to start there. You can't start down because they won't listen to you. Yeah. And he said, well, how do you do it? And I said, well, I play two sides of the coin here. I'm an American. I call up and I say, so-and-so in the United States, I'd like to see Mr. Rainmaker. I'll be down there. And oh, American guy's coming down. And when I get down, I start talking to him in Spanish. And because I learned Spanish when I was 5 years old in Argentina, in Buenos Aires, I learned it without an accent.
Yeah.
So then I started talking to him. I said, well, now, wait a minute. Are you Argentine or are you American? And so I play the American thing when I get there. Then when they find out I am an American, but I just happen to speak Spanish without an accent, Argentine Spanish, then all of a sudden I break down the barriers and we talk. So I get American, I get started. Then when I start, then I can work the way thing down.
Yeah.
I played that all the time.
Well, I know that was.
And it's not playing it. It's actually
that's what I wanted to get back to your history. You were there and you lived it, so it was a lot easier to do it. And I know that people at times would think of you as being an Argentine, and that was kind of almost ingrained that was your culture. And that's why sometimes when people try to do things internationally, they really make a mistake. They don't understand the culture, and that's what I'm saying here is that they think they're going to do it like they've always done it, or they're going to tell people that they're going to do it their way, and it doesn't happen. I mean, we could compete with big companies because they were trying to do it the way the U.S. did it, but you could go in and be cross-trained and be very flexible to needs. So we're going to wrap that up, and I think that we'll probably have had enough for the day. So so enjoyed it.
There
All right. Yeah, Sid, we're back here again talking about our trips and our working together, but also I wanted to kind of focus today on Brazil. I know we made a lot of different trips, and some of us we went to Rio and we were doing business development, and we kind of talked to some people. I was a little bit less impressed than I thought I'd be on Rio just because of, I guess they were preparing for the Olympics that time, but there was a lot of overweight foreign people there, and I guess maybe I was one of them. But we had a fun time either checking out the girl from Ipanema, but there was not a whole lot of activity at that time, and maybe some foreign people that came in. But I thought really some of the things because it's the financial capital of Brazil is Sao Paulo, and we went there several times. I mean, I don't know how many times, but a lot of times we were matching up with people or talking to people that were in the cable there, and then there's people that were manufacturing things. So we were traveling in and out of there a lot and talking to people. But one of the people I remember was Gene Musselman, who had done a lot of work over in
the Special Forces guy.
Yeah, Vietnam, and one guy that worked with me was he called him a Charles Bronson type, but he was very favorable. The thing about I remember he was very complimentary of the work we had done in Budapest for UIH, and UIH was later turned into be Liberty Global and John Malone and all that group. So that was kind of the things that we had done in the European market and now into Brazil, and so it was interesting talking to him. And we always knew that when we went someplace, it would cost quite a bit different going there than getting back. That's a big city. I think I saw it's 12 million. But I've heard 25 million or so.
People usually say 20 million, but
yeah,
who knows?
Well, the thing about that is it's kind of one of those cities that you never hear much about, and it has a lot of financial presence as far as the South American market. So when things go good or bad, that kind of goes through there. But I had done some work over in Pelotas, as we mentioned in an earlier interview, but that was in southern Brazil. But the thing that was really interesting was when we went to Manaus. It's a city of about 2 million. It's cosmopolitan in the sense that there are people from all over the world there. And I thought, well, it's maybe a sweatshop thing, but it's world-class equipment. And so we had a chance to see people who are doing a lot of different manufacturing. Our focus was set-top boxes, but I know that you'd been to Manaus several times, and it's a tax-free, or at least they give a credit. So what is it about Manaus now that would attract all these people in there to do manufacturing, and why maybe we went there because of the set-top box and other things?
Well, Manaus has a surprising, like you said, surprisingly advanced high-tech infrastructure for manufacturing. There's about 4 or 5 different big plants there that I visited over time. Very sophisticated. I was surprised. They have the latest equipment for all the chips and the whole thing, man. They were very, very advanced. We went there to see how we could line up set-top box manufacturing.
Right, and people are not familiar with the history of Manaus. They were famous for the rubber tree.
Yeah, Manaus started out as a center for rubber.
Mm-hmm.
Years and years, they led the world in rubber production, and then rubber trees were exported down to Indonesia and Thailand and other places. Pretty soon, the Manaus market stopped.
Yeah, well, that's an important call, I can tell. But yeah, when we were there, then the idea that we got to see the infrastructure that was built back in the days with the rubber tree and how much money and the affluence in the big I don't know, is it I guess where they had performances of things. We went to that area, and so you could see the tree.
They have a world-class theater there.
Yeah, the theater.
People are dumbfounded when they go and they look at this enormous theater with all this fancy stuff in it. And it was built during the heyday of the rubber business in Manaus. Beautiful, beautiful theater. Manaus is an astounding city, actually. People expect to see a little jungle city. It's 2 million people, big buildings, and all kinds of high-tech infrastructure, and all kinds of business activity, and all kinds of things.
Well, I think being the center of the biggest rainforest in the world is another thing that kind of draws people there. We could go down and see all kinds of ships or boats coming in with all kinds of fish.
They call it the lungs of the world right there.
Yeah, the lungs. Right.
I remember the first time I saw it years and years ago. I was so overcome with emotion, I got tears in my eyes, actually, because I was thinking, look at the enormous size of this river, the lungs of the world. Yeah. It was quite an experience. It's a beautiful experience to be there. Yes.
Well, one of the things we kind of want to talk about, because I'm kind of open to doing a lot of things, but I was a little surprised when we talked about fishing for piranha. And then when we went down to the area there to get a little bait, I remember that we walked around there, and when they heard what we were doing, they said their fish was not for bait, it was for cooking. So we had to kind of get away from that. But also, the little boat that we went out on, was, when they talk about getting a bigger boat, we probably need to get a bigger boat. But there's one guy that was guide, and he seemed to be reliable, but we didn't do any other checking other than just talk to him, and his rates were really reasonable. And he actually had a cell phone at that time even, so we knew that he could call somebody, but we didn't know exactly what he was going to be. So I thought, do you remember when you were negotiating that deal? Because it was kind of a funny deal that we got, us 2 guys with him in a boat, and we left from the area there around Manaus, but we went out on the wide Amazon where the 2 rivers come together, and then we found a real small river, or small, I guess, tributary to come in and do our fishing. But do you remember anything about that negotiation?
Well, first of all, let's say that the 2 rivers come together. The Rio Negro comes in from the northwest, and the Solimões comes from the...
So it's kind of a black, and you can see where they match.
The Solimões River is kind of tan-colored.
Yeah.
And the Rio Negro, as the name implies, is dark. And then the 2 waters mix. You can see them come. You see the tan water, and you see the black water. They're flowing together for quite a ways downstream before it starts to mix together again.
Okay.
And good fishing where they 2 first come together there. In fact, they have dolphins there, freshwater dolphins.
Yeah, I think that's what people...
Kind of pinkish colored ones.
Yeah. And what kind of bass? They have some kind of a bass there too, don't they?
They have a bass called tucunaré.
Okay.
Some people call it a peacock bass.
Yeah, the peacock bass. Yeah. That's what you hear the real fishermen. We're close to the Bass Pro, and I've seen a little bit of that with Johnny Morris, and so he's got an aquarium. And talked a little bit about going down there, but I didn't see him say much about going out for the piranha, but I think the peacock bass is what people go down there for.
There's another big fish called tucunaré.
Okay.
It's a great big fish, can get to be 10 feet. And it's got big, thick scales on it.
Yeah.
And they're quite a few. The problem is, it's starting to get a little overfished. And the tucunaré are hard to find now.
Okay.
And we went to that restaurant we had there, we ate tucunaré.
Mm-hmm.
And but the tucunaré were like 10, 11 feet. Now they're starting to be a little bit smaller. The big ones are hard to get. Then, of course, they have the fish they call the shark of the river. Piraiba, it's called Piraiba. It's a great big fish with a big tail, and it's kind of like a catfish sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it's been known to swallow little children swimming in the river. Oh, the big mouth comes up, boom, they're gone.
So you being a pilot and heard the story about the kids that survived for 40 days here recently when they crashed, and was that pretty amazing to you that they could kind of stay around where the plane crashed and be able to survive in that situation?
Amazing.
Yeah, it's kind of me too. I mean, they actually knew what to do and how to survive on that, because we know there's a lot of things you can eat there.
Well, you and I went fishing for piranhas, right?
Yeah.
And you get a hook with a long shank on it because their teeth will cut through anything.
Right.
So you have a long shank on it, and just a raw piece of meat, just a piece of beef, red beef.
It is why everyone.
Then you sit in the boat and you thrash the water with the pole, so that the piranha thinks that something's struggling.
Yeah.
Then you drop the line down and wham, they hit it.
Well, the funny thing about that is that they knew the difference in that, and some ducks paddling around pretty close by, and even kids swimming. So I think people thinking they're going to attack people, but it really, the blood and being more of like a wolf or something going after anything that's got blood on it is really the draw there. And
I think there was a little pier there, one of those places we were at, and some little kids swimming, and the mother was there, and I said, how come you let them swim there? There's all kinds of piranhas.
Yeah.
He said, well, they're not bleeding.
Yeah.
How do you know they're not going to jump off and cut their foot with it? But she didn't seem that worried.
Yeah. Well,
but boy, that thing goes after that raw that raw bait real fast.
Yeah. Well, the thing I found out is I wasn't the one to take the one off I know you could take it off the hook, but I had the guy that was with us, and he had kind of a missing finger or two, or tip of finger. So.
Well, when the mouse was going like that continually, they got those real sharp teeth.
Yeah. Well, the thing there was, after we caught several, it was easy to catch, and we went to a place, and again, I'm sure this worked out with our guide a little bit, to a place, kind of a river boat or whatever, and there was a lady there that was kind of telling us how they cooked it, and sometimes the soup, and sometimes they fried it, and even my friend that's a writer at the newspaper, Arkansas Democrat Gazette, wrote an article about the fish.
Well, that's what this lady did. She gutted it, of course, and then she fried it in what I think was butter, looked like butter, flipped it over like that, and put a lot of garlic on it, salt, and we ate the piranha, so the piranha eating us.
Yeah. Well, that was a good thing about the things that we did in Brazil. We did make a trip over to Fortaleza, and we I think we tasted a lot of different juices, and that was a fun evening too. But there's a lot of different things we were able to do. And I'm going to kind of wrap up the Brazil part of it at this point, and then we'll talk about Argentina next.
Okay. There we go.
Okay. Yeah. Sid, was several trips to Argentina. I know you kind of grew up down there, so you're very familiar with Buenos Aires.
I always tell people, I live in Phoenix, Arizona, but my hometown is Buenos Aires.
All right. Well, you were mistaken many times as being an Argentine, and of course you're able to go to Brazil and handle that language as well. So no big deal there. But that was the benefit there, being able to be bilingual as well as being
trilingual.
Trilingual, yeah, that's right. When you start talking about the Portuguese, so I think people get confused on that when you start into the difference there, and there's a lot of little differences and things that people can pick up on, whether you are fluent in Argentine or if you're into Brazilian, as far as Portuguese. So, but the times I went down there, I know I look back at my passports, and at least 30 times, and there were a lot of different reasons to go down there and talk to people. And one of the things that I always stayed at the Marriott Plaza, which it bordered on the Florida street, and it was real active there, and you just walk down it. It was closed off to traffic. And then the other was the front, right out to there was a plaza there that you could see everything, and wasn't too much of a walk over to the Recoleta, which is the cemetery over there. So we were able to do a lot of things from that location. But one of the things that was kind of an interesting story was the doorman. He was a real popular guy, and he was really one of the best in tango. And when Madonna came down, and she was doing the movie Evita, and she had to be trained, I think, more for the Argentine type of tango, but I remember the door. Man, and I don't know what your remembrance are, but he was really very good. But he was doing so many other things than just being a doorman. He was very popular. So
yeah, he was very popular. One time I was walking into that plaza, and there was Robert Duvall. He was making a movie there at the same time. Yeah, that.
Well, that they you know, if you look up Marriott and look at the plaza and look at the old, you can see everybody. That stayed there over the years, whereas astronauts.
That was the place to stay. Now they got 2 or 3 other hotels.
Yeah. It's a little different world now, but back then, at that time when we were doing that, but that was kind of the interesting part there. And I remember one night, and we made some contacts here and had some discussion. But when you have the Argentina, you know, the ambassador, not the ambassador, but
Ambassador Cheek from Little Rock.
Leader, I guess, in a sense.
Argentina ambassador.
Come there, but it came there and picked us up, and he picked us up, and he was wearing jeans, and he had a driver, and he was in black Mercedes, and we were all dressed in a suit, and so it was kind of interesting to go out, and he was a rock star at that time because he was supporting some of the low level.
Oh, he supported. He was a supporter of one of the national teams there.
Yeah,
I forget which one it was, but he was very popular.
Yeah,
he had a big flag of the teams up on the wall in the embassy.
Yeah. So it was an interesting time to do that, and we had a lot of interesting times with Pablo Abdian, who helped us with the system over in Brazil. But we had Group Bull, which was a distributor, and really it was kind of important to get a distributor there, and the people there were very. I do remember at that time that it's pretty, well, it was not unexpected to smoke in those rooms, so it's kind of a tough thing.
Yeah. Both he and his sort of his business partner, Gustavo Tino, I never saw 2 guys that smoked as much as those guys do. We'd be in that room there, man, you'd have to leave after a while because I thought we'd come down and pass out there. All the oxygen was gone, it was just smoke. But they were very competent guys, they helped us out a lot.
Yeah, but that was kind of an interesting group, but they also were very, we worked with them in a lot of other countries, so an interesting way of connecting with them because they had presidents. I know that they helped us in a presentation I did in Beijing, China, and other places because their headquarters was in Paris, so we had people over there at times, so it was interesting to do that.
I don't know if you remember the time when we had, it was, I think, either that lunch or the lunch before, we had parrillada, where they bring out the little deal with the coals underneath, and you got all kinds of sheep guts called chichulines. Then they have molleja, which is thyroid gland of the cow, and all kinds of other stuff. We ate that. Then we took a walk out to that cemetery. You wanted to find Evita's.
It was kind of a rainy day, and we were out there traipsing around in the Recoleta, and
we went out there, and finally we found her
where the Duartes were buried.
Yeah, and in her tomb it says, "I left as one, I shall return as millions."
Yeah.
So people are still waiting for her to come back with her millions. She hasn't come back.
Yeah, I was like, when I was thinking about that a while ago, when I was talking about the ambassador, it was James or Jim Cheek and he had actually been, I guess, appointed by Bill Clinton, but he had been over in Africa and some other places before he went, to there. And there are a lot of things recently about Ted Lasso and his supporting a low-level soccer team, but I thought that was kind of, I saw something about men and the president one time sending him a message because he was kind of getting over the officials in one thing that maybe they had some trouble with. So he's well remembered for that, because I saw when he died that there were a lot of people saying that there's no better American that they'd seen in Argentina than him.
He was beloved.
Yeah, he was, and that's
San Lorenzo. That was the team he supported.
Yeah,
San Lorenzo.
Yeah,
but it didn't matter. The fact he supported the local team just made him enormously popular.
Yeah,
he'd go there and he'd stand and they'd cheer, and you know.
Well, we went down. I know one time we were there, and we did go to a soccer match, and it was pretty interesting because they had the chicken wire fence around some of the club rowdies, I guess, and they had a lot of activity going on there. You know, I've always been to the American football, but when you went there, it was kind of a totally different feel.
I'll tell you what, in Argentina and Brazil and a lot of those countries, soccer is not a sport.
Yeah,
it's a religion.
Yeah.
And you don't leave your religion. To be converted to another, you're an infidel or something, You start out supporting one team and you support them all the rest of your life.
Yeah, I was following, the World Cup, and for them to win like they did, I mean, they had some real exciting matches, and I don't know any time I've been so involved with soccer. Usually not that big a soccer fan, but when the World Cup was going on, I just knew that so many of the people that were my friends down there, they were, they just watched every move and everything. So I enjoyed that. And
Maradona was a demigod in Argentina.
Yeah.
Then after he died, he wasn't a real good example as a human being, but he was a tremendous soccer player. Then Messi took over, Lionel Messi.
Yeah,
now Messi is the demigod. Messi's a good role model for young people.
Yeah.
Maradona wasn't quite the role model.
Yeah.
He didn't want to be either, but Messi is just basically a good guy.
I think when we were at that match, or that Maradona was there, and I remember the buzz and excitement when somebody like that attends a soccer match like that. So there's a lot of things that you just can't believe goes on when all those things are happening. So I really like Argentina. The place over there with the grapes, I forget the city where all the, they grow the grapes.
Mendoza.
Yeah. We went over there, and we were working with some people over there.
Yeah.
And it was kind of an interesting place because of being a little ways from Buenos Aires, but also a lot of the things they were doing technically.
Beautiful little place.
Yeah. No, that was great.
Nice setting.
Yeah, that was very, very nice. So we're going to wrap it up for Argentina, and we'll come back on another one here.
Okay.
Well, one thing I wanted to talk about, because every community's got their warts, and Harrison sure has had that recently in social media, dealing with the KKK, and even though that's something we can have trouble with because of social media, and in fact, people can say a lot of things that are not true, and I've done about 4 years of history and discovery, but I was thinking back, because we are close friends, and how sometimes people with differences, they sometimes try to skirt around them, and they don't talk about them or discuss them. And so I did want to at least briefly talk about the Mountain Meadow Massacre. I know and I don't know, after a time or two, or maybe more than that, you came in to Harrison. I said something about the statue or something. So I just wanted to kind of get your emotion when you went down to the square there and you saw the Mountain Meadow Massacre, and what your thinking are, just so I can kind of have that out there. So,
well, when I was in Harrison, you took me over to that monument. There was a monument there. It had a listing of the Fancher Party, the names of the people.
Yeah.
And then it said something, I don't remember the word, but it was something like murdered by the Mormons or something.
Yeah.
And I knew a little bit about the mountain. It's kind of a black spot, And
yeah.
I knew a little bit about it. And then it turns out that my great-great-grandfather wasn't involved in that mountain, but he was in that area, and he was in Utah, in northern Utah at the time, and when this happened, and he somehow got involved. He knew a little bit about it and so forth, and then later when they had a trial on it. Now, my feeling about the Mountain Meadow Massacre is I cannot explain why somebody would have a reaction like, I don't care what they said. Supposedly one of the party held up a rifle and said, "This is the rifle that killed Joseph Smith." which was an impossibility. At least I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
But somehow these guys just got so angry. They were so hurt by having to be moved out of Illinois, then moved out of Missouri, and forced to come back, come west. You know, they were just very sensitive about it. When some guy said, "This is the guy," you know, they said, "Okay, that's it, man. We're not taking it anymore." There is no justification for what was done.
Yeah.
No way. No justification. But people, human beings, you know. And so I went to Mount Metter. They have a tube. You look through this tube, it's a metal tube, and it says, "There's where it took place." And it was out in this open area, of course. And what happened there is tragic.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a proper thing. It's an embarrassment to me personally. And the fact that my great-great-grandfather owned land in that area and somehow got involved. And the guy that took the heat on this thing was John D. Lee.
Mm-hmm.
And right now I fish a place up on the Colorado River called Lee's Ferry. Excellent fishing for trout there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where he had a ferry. But he kind of took the heat.
Mm-hmm.
And suffered capital punishment for it.
Right.
And because my great-great-grandfather had something to do with the testimony against him, I'm not sure exactly, I don't know the detail, but somehow he got involved. The Lee family in St. John's and the descendants of Jacob Hamlin, who were my line of people, had enmity between them when they were young. My dad told me, he said, "Yeah, I can remember feeling enmity between the Lees because of Jacob Hamlin." And but later on in college, I got to know Rex Lee, who became president, was the attorney, a big-time attorney in Washington, D.C., then later became dean of the law school at BYU, then president of BYU,
right.
Tremendous guy. And I made friends with him, and my cousins, we all made friends with him. Everything was forgotten. It's just so long ago, forget about it, you know. No enmity. We don't know exactly what. The Lord will have to judge all that.
Yeah.
I certainly can't. I don't have enough. I mean, it looks bad to me, but I'm not the one judging it.
Right. And I know that in your visit to
Harrison. Yeah, that's right. Then we went to Harrison. And what's Fancher's first name?
J.K.
Yeah. J.K.
At the Kiwanis Club. Yeah, you met with
him.
him.
I met him. We talked about that. We kind of had a good talk about it. And
yeah, he's a historian. He's collected all.
Oh, he knew more stuff about it than I did. He knew all about Jacob Hamlin too.
Yeah. Right.
Oh, he says, "You're a descendant of Jacob Hamlin." I said, "Yeah." "Oh, yeah, I know all about your." Anyway, Jacob Hamlin was a good guy, and how he got involved testifying against John D. Lee, I'm not sure, but I think Fancher and I shook hands and
it was a congenial thing, and I think it was great. You know, the thing is that we did so many things, and we didn't really realize we needed this thing started in Arkansas, but we did. Maybe we hadn't connected to the fact that we had a monument there in Harrison that kind of shows where the Mountain Meadow Massacre people left from, and that area. It was kind of out.
It was a very sad thing that happened, and in my mind, there's no way to really justify. What they should have said is, "Look, they're causing problems. Just let them, get them on their way, get them out of there, move them on wherever they want to go."
Yeah.
Just stop and do what they do.
See all the stories. You can go to YouTube and you can get all kinds of things. But really, what brought it into this story a little bit is that there's a broad subject about accepting people for differences, and sometimes we talk about that with people with disabilities and other things. But close friends may have some differences, and some of these things that pop up that you didn't even think about. But most of the time, I think it's appropriate that you can kind of at least go back and revisit it and discuss it, so you kind of feel what each person thinks about it. But it's not necessarily going to be settled for the people in the past, but it's just something we can talk about as we go forward as friends, and that's really what some of the things I wanted to do is to kind of approach that from that direction.
One thing that I think about, and forgive me for getting a little biblical here, but the life of Christ.
Yeah.
Look at this man, Jesus Christ. More than a man. Who did he deal with? He met with people at the lowest level. His biggest problem was people that were hypocrites. That was the biggest sin, hypocrisy. He dealt with lower level people. He dealt with lepers. He dealt with women in sin. He dealt with this, that. Why did he do that? Here's this Son of God and all the power that he had and all the thing behind him, and yet he would see the lowest people. Why? I would ask myself, because he could see human potential in the lowest form of humanity. And that's what we've got to do, in my opinion. We've got to understand human beings have enormous potential in eternity, but we've got to learn to see that like he did. Said not judge, but love. And that's the hardest thing in the world to do. Too many times we want to act all elitist and do all these things, be superior above other people. We separate ourselves sometimes by race, by education, by good looks, by whatever, money, and we can't do that.
Okay.
It has to be, we have to see every human being the way they are, the way Christ saw them.
All right. I think that's really some great points, and I wanted to wrap that up at this point, and we're about to do a wrap up.
Okay.
Yeah, Sid, I want to cover some of the, I guess, wrap up here, and some of the places that we went to that maybe we didn't spend as much time, but one of the things I think...
We saw the world, Herb.
Yeah.
At least in Latin America, we saw the continent.
We saw all over that, and some of the funny places, or different places, was one of them I thought was going to Venezuela and going to Caracas. I recall on that, it was pretty much you got a first class trip there and on the airline, and it was one of those things that when we got there, though, it seemed like we were just visiting a potential client and staying at the hotel because it's pretty, it wasn't safe there. I mean, I think the guy told us that, and he kind of.
Let me tell you, the first time I went to Caracas was I went with, when I still worked for Hewlett Packard. I went with Bill Hewlett.
Yeah.
We went to Caracas, then we went to Sao Paulo. And when I first went to, that's the first time I went to Caracas. I was very young, just out of school. And Caracas was a beautiful city. Freeways, steel and glass skyscrapers.
Oh, yeah.
Restaurants that were incredible, beautiful. One of the best seafood meals I ever had in my life was at a restaurant in Caracas. Beautiful people, beautiful everything. Stores, everything was wonderful. It looked like a first world country to me.
Mm-hmm.
The last time I went was about, 30 years later. One of the last times, Chavez just came into power.
Mm-hmm.
And things started going downhill. He was kicking people out. He was introducing socialism. And what was once a thriving economy, once it was injected with socialism, it started deteriorating. Then it turned into communism. Then it fell apart. And the last time I was there was after you and I went. I went down there for something. I can't remember what it was. And it was scary.
All right.
I had a taxi going down one of those main streets there, and it seemed like on every corner there was like a 15-year-old soldier with a machine gun just looking at you like, give me an excuse to shoot you, Man, I circulated around, went back to the airport, got on the plane, went home. I was through there. I've been back since.
Yeah, no,
I've never seen a country deteriorate quite as fast and go from such a high to such a low.
No, I think the driver he had a Glock or something.
Oh, listen, we went to see this guy that you wanted to check the technology or something, and they said, okay, we'll go to the airport. He said, don't go with the taxi. My guy will drive you. We said, okay. We got into this car. It was a what do you call it? A big dark car with
limousine or something.
Yeah, some kind of a limousine or something. And he pulled out a big, long 45. I've never seen such a big 45, a barrel about that long. Put it under his leg. He was driving like that, and he had that 45 under his leg. And I said, do you think you'll have to use that? And he says, who knows?
I think he has before.
Get us to the airport as fast as you can, man.
Well, the other place I want to wrap up is talk a little bit more about. Oh, well, we went to Chile, I guess, or whatever, and we went over to Santiago, but we went to the coast there, and I think you had spent some time on the coast.
Yeah, I used to live, when my dad was a diplomat with the U.S. government, we lived in Viña del Mar.
Mm-hmm.
I think I told you, right close to Valparaiso, there's a university there, the University of Santa Maria.
Right.
Many years ago, I played basketball for the university there. And so we lived
You got any? I guess I don't know if you'd have any tapes of that, but I guess it might be some drawings or something, or pictures, maybe, huh?
Well, the only thing I remember about playing basketball, there was one of the last games I ever played. There was about 10 seconds left.
Yeah.
I don't remember all the detail. I've told this so many times that probably I've got it all confused. But so in my memory, the way I think I saw it, we 10 seconds left. We were 1 point behind. The point guy was to bring the ball down. We had a center, a 6'8" center, a guy named Bruno Lutzinger.
Okay.
And whichever way he went was the strong side.
Yeah.
If he went this way, it was the strong side. I came on this side. The point guy came on that side. If he came on my side, mine was the strong side, and the guy on the weak side was supposedly going to take the shot.
Yeah.
So we go down. The center went over to the right. So I went down. It was my shot.
Okay.
The center went that way. He was our main guy. People shifted kind of that way to block him. So they hit me with the ball. They had a nice little jumper that I've been making all night.
Yeah.
I jumped up, shot. The ball hit the back of the rim, bounced up in the air, and when it was about that high, the buzzer went off.
Oh.
And I lost by 1 point. I don't even remember how I got home. I don't remember getting home. I don't remember anything. That's
one of those.
When I think of playing basketball at Santa Maria, that's what I remember was that. Of course, it was 60 years ago. But
yeah.
anyway.
Well, I think the other story is when we went to, and we were doing stuff in Chile with the UIH there. Again, that was the one that we worked with in Europe, and they had ownership all over the world, so that's why we were doing some stuff in Chile. But we went to up into Peru, and what I remember about landing in Lima and walking around there is, like we said, with the people walking around with the automatic guns and everything, everywhere you went. But it was kind of unusual in the sense that you would see people with pick and shovel, drill, I guess fixing for the fiber optics cable or something, that was kind of, you just say, well, that seems kind of odd. And then you might be on another street, you might be, there might be some cockfights or some other things going on.
Dog fights or something.
Yeah, all kinds of fights that you wouldn't matter about. But it was kind of away from everything because we flew out to Arequipa, and Arequipa's up on the Andes, and it is just such a beautiful city. And I know that a lot of people probably don't ever go there, but it's really a beautiful city, and it had a great setting. And we talked to the cable operator there and spent some time there, and then eventually they took us out to a meal, and we had the Peru delicacy, and I think you're the one that first lit up about that. I'll let you describe a little bit of that.
Well,
Arequipa and that, if you
Cuy.
could.
They call it Cuy. There are a lot of different names for it. Cuy, I told her was a rat.
Yeah, the presentation is something different.
It's actually more like a guinea pig, but I told her it was a rat. So they brought it out on a plate, and the rat was. And I remember you turned around because you didn't want the rat looking at you. So you turned around. He was all cooked, but his eyes out like that. It tastes like chicken, right?
I guess, yeah, everything like that.
All those kinds of things taste like chicken.
Well, we went to a lot of places. I can definitely remember that. There's no better steak than there was in Argentina and Brazil, that's for sure, when we went out to those meals. But, we did kind of experience a lot of other things too that went with the culture. I mean, we tried, I think, and that's the, smelling the roses. Sometimes you have to do that in order to win over people because of the cultural differences they may have. So that was kind of the point there, is that you run into a lot of things you wouldn't expect, and I didn't know anything about it. You probably knew more about it. That was a delicacy.
Well, I've never been to Arequipa before. That was the first time.
Yeah,
I'd heard of it as a white city.
Yeah.
I didn't know what they meant by that. Now I saw it because there's all that. What kind of rock was that?
I don't know.
They told us. I can't remember. It's almost like a white marble.
We're going to have to Google that for sure.
And the buildings are all made out of it. The walls and everything. It's just a white city sitting out there. It's at the foot of a gigantic volcano called Misti.
Yeah.
Misti.
Yeah.
And they claimed if we would have gone around on the backside of that volcano up in the hills, that we could watch the condors fly.
All right.
But I'd never seen that. It was a beautiful city, unusual city, kind of like a celestial city out there.
Like a castle or something.
Yeah.
That way it was. I could imagine back in the old days or something, nobody could have got to the people, getting there to start with. And again, anytime you start thinking about Arequipa, you think about the Andes and the music of the Andes because you're right up there with it. And so anytime you hear that, it kind of always, as we said before, strikes a certain emotion because of just the sound itself. And so.
And the main song is one called El Cóndor Pasa, the Condor Passes.
Yeah.
El Cóndor Pasa.
Yeah.
And that's a very mystical song. Yeah. And the music and the wording and the singing and so forth. Simon and Garfunkel did a thing on that. They had some crazy words on it.
I know it, and that's why
the music was
it got to be real popular when they had it. And every time I hear that version and hear some of the things we heard there, it's just kind of, it's hard to make the match. But
well, the wording that Simon Garfunkel used was kind of weird, but
yeah.
But the music itself, you close your eyes, it just creates a picture in your mind. Like I said earlier, I hear it today and I still get nostalgic and get that weird mystical feeling,
Well, I think it's been great to relive all these things, and we'll have it out there so you can see it, and we may have it in some other things. So I really appreciate your time coming by.
Thank you for everything.
We've had such a great memories.
Let me just say one thing here. One thing that Herb has been to me is a great example of loyalty and honesty, and I appreciate that because that's rare. Those are rare commodities today.
Yeah, well,
but
it's always knowing that you weren't going to get into any trouble traveling together. We always had great times together, and we had a lot of fun, as we kind of described.
Clean fun. We had good fun. We could talk to our kids about.
People can do that traveling, and it's one of the other points is you can do a lot of things and just go out and take the time to kind of look at things. Just like the Evita tomb, her name is Duarte, or the family. It was fun to go out there and traipse around in the rain and find where she had been buried. But I don't know if people hardly understood, the impact there. But we did go see the Evita, the movie, while we were down here at one point.
Oh.
People stood up and applauded and what she meant to the country. So there's a lot of things you take away from those events and things we did together. That's why I wanted to kind of go back and reflect on that today. It may be something that other people see and get a better understanding of getting along with other people, the differences, but also just getting along with friends and traveling and getting.
One thing you do when you travel like we and I did, you meet all these different people, you realize the human family is basically the same. Kids in Peru or Indonesia, and I lived in Singapore for a while. You've been all over the Mideast and all over the place. People love their kids. They want good things for their kids. People are basically good. And if we could just bring out the goodness in the world, it'd be a different place.
Man, I think we have to leave it at that, but that's a great point. And I think that's what we're trying to, make sure people understand. So, thank you.
You bet.